Hey there, I'm here to give you a few tips on Lesson 2 and, of course, an overview. In Lesson 2, students are going to learn a lot about earthquake waves and how they affect the surface of Earth, and also which body waves travel fastest. And that idea about body waves traveling at different rates becomes very important in the next few lessons when we're talking about how to find the epicenter of an earthquake. So, despite any other things that arise during this lesson, you want to make sure that your students understand that body waves, there are two types of body waves, P waves and S waves, and they travel at a different rate. So you really want to drive that home. So let's go over a few tips in this lesson. The first tip is about this actual investigation. In the Explore section, students are modeling waves using a slinky, and we've included this concept map here to help you and your students get a clear picture of how these seismic waves can be organized. And in the first thing they want to do is measure the speed that the body waves travel through Earth to Earth's surface. They'll do this with a slinky. So before going straight to the book and digging into that procedure, allow students some time to come up with their own investigation. The book gets bogged down in the procedure, and we want to be sure students have the big picture before they start reading the book's procedure, and they may even come up with a better way than the book offers. Once they've done that, again measuring the speed that these two waves travel, they then will investigate surface waves. And when they investigate surface waves, they are simply looking at the effect of the surface waves on structures and trees on the surface of Earth. So this takes a lot of mental modeling, and I'm going to show you some pictures from the book so that you can kind of see what I'm driving at. Excuse me, I thought that book would just pop right up. Okay, so if you're following the procedure in the book, the first thing that students will do is measure the speed at which body waves move through the surface, through Earth, through the body of Earth. And students will have to control all kinds of variables, and there's some tips about that in the book. They may come up with their own tips. But the main thing you want to help your students understand is that they've got to model it as if this child here is deep inside Earth, and this young lady here is sitting at Earth's surface. So this is kind of a confusing model for students, because in reality, if you were going to really mimic the spatial aspect of this, you'd have to put this kid way underground. So help students understand that orientation, because they again are modeling body waves. So they'll do a side-to-side motion and a push-pull motion. And what the book suggests that you do, and what students may come up with on their own, is to measure the time it takes for the wave to reach the surface and return. So once you've established that these two types of body waves travel at different speeds, and students get to do all kinds of neat trials and averages and learn all about controlling variables in this simple and straightforward activity, then you will model surface waves. And you have to completely reorient yourself and your students to model surface waves. No longer are you talking about anything happening in the body of Earth, but you're simply modeling the movement of surface waves and how they affect structures on Earth's surface. And those structures are represented by masking tape. This activity is best done in a place where you have a floor, like in a hallway, and if you do not have any floor, everything's covered in carpet, you may want to put a bunch of tables together. If you have to do it on the carpet, that's okay too. It's just one more variable you have to think about. Again, it's okay if students are getting wonky results. It's very difficult to control the variables when you're modeling those body waves. When students arrive at the Explain section, there is an article, and students will learn that the P waves travel faster than the S waves, and this again is an important concept when they learn when they begin to learn how to find the epicenter of an earthquake. We've added a little video about reconstructing Haiti, and that gives students some context for the elaborate activity, which is to build an earthquake-resistant house. You will have the materials to build the house provided in your kit. If you've never worked with plaster of Paris, you may want to play around with this a little bit. If you, when you're using plaster of Paris, there's really no exact ratio of water to powder that's perfect. You just have to mess around with it. So let's say you're mixing up plaster of Paris in a bucket with a spoon and you get just that right ratio. You want to go ahead and get that out of that bucket as soon as possible because it will begin to set sometimes pretty quickly. So let's say you spoon some of that plaster of Paris out into your pans and then you need more. Well, if you try to use the same bucket and spoon that has a little bit of the old plaster of Paris in it, when you go to make your new plaster of Paris, it turns into a nightmare. It solidifies immediately. Don't ask me how this happens. I should probably do my own investigation and find out. But I learned after lots of trial and error to keep clean buckets and clean stirring apparatus so that if I did need to make more, then I could always have something clean to use. If you wash out a bucket and a spoon, you got to dry them off and start from scratch. You may want to just go ahead and mix up your plaster of Paris and then just go around your classroom and spoon it out into the students' pans that are going to use that as a base all at one time. It takes some work. Don't feel like you're going to get this perfect the first time. You just have to figure out what works for you. Students love building their earthquake-resistant houses. And if you feel like you need more information about the engineering design process, there was a PowerPoint included in the Understanding Weather and Climate module, which is available on that PowerPoint, which you have access to, so you can look at that on your own. And if you need further help on that, please let your facilitator or your site specialist know. And this brings us to the end of Lesson 2. I highly encourage you to let your students do this lesson. They love it. You do want to put some time limits on everything because they can drag this out for days and days and days. So, adhere to your time limits and enjoy this lesson. And one more time, what you really want to learn is make sure students know is that the body waves travel at different speeds. Just drive that home. Thanks for watching. Have a great time, and we look forward to seeing some pictures of your earthquake-resistant houses or your slinkies or something else fun from this lesson.